we have actors in summer blockbusters, and I'm kicking that off. And I remember what my change was. I made a last minute change because I remembered some things. So first off, to kick this off, a character or a person we just recently talked about, I have Harrison Ford. Uh, he one of his characters made our Mount Rushmore of summer blockbuster characters. He also played Han Solo, and then there were some other kind of one-off roles like Air Force One. And so Harrison Ford made my list. And then I also have Tom Cruise, who basically made my list for ushering and kind of bringing us the Mission Impossible franchise and leading that franchise. And I feel like it's the best action franchise going right now, and maybe of all time. And then I also have Will Smith, who basically dominated the 90s as far as summer blockbusters. There was a time basically up until Wild Wild West, he was known as Mr. July 4th because he had a new movie every July 4th weekend, and it was kind of always one of the big hits of the summer. And then finally, I have kind of in an age where the movie star doesn't exist anymore, a guy who basically can release anything in theaters and it'll be a big hit, and that's Dwayne The Rock Johnson for my final and fourth pick of my Mount Rushmore summer blockbuster actors.
Yeah, I'm excited for this category because I think there's three of them that are going to be obvious, and then I think the fourth spot is going to be where we come to debate on. So, like Joe, I have Harrison Ford, but I think the most obvious choice here is Tom Cruise. Um, just based on my account alone, he's been in 11 different summer blockbuster movies. I believe it's four Mission Impossible movies that were released in the summer: Top Gun, Risky Business, Days of Thunder, Minority Report, Collateral, War of the Worlds, Tropic Thunder. All of those were released in the summer, and those are just the big ones that he's done. So I think that's a without a doubt. I also went with Will Smith because he did obviously Independence Day, both Men in Black, or well, all three I think Men in Black movies that he was in. I Robot, both like all the Bad Boys movies. He's been in a ton of summer blockbusters. So I think those three, it's
Suicide
not a
Squad.
debate on. Um, yes, Suicide Squad. And then I think my last one I will argue for because everyone knows at this point my love of James Bond, and I think people don't give Roger Moore the credit that he deserves. And we talked about how 10 of the, James Bond movies were released in the summer. Roger Moore did Live and Let Die, which was June of 73. He did The Spy Who Loved Me, which was June of 77. Moonraker, which was June of 79. For Your Eyes Only, and Cannonball Run in 1981, which were both huge hits. Cannonball Run made like $160 million. And then he did Octopussy and A View to a Kill, both in 83 and 85 in the summer as well. So when James Bond was dominating the summers, it was Roger Moore as James Bond. And he also has another movie in there with Cannonball Run that made a ton of money and was a huge hit. So I wanted to find at least one if he, did it outside of his franchise, and he did. He was a bigger star than people remember him being. And I think he deserves a spot on the list because, like Joe said with Harrison Ford, he already has a character that's on the Mount Rushmore. And while most of his big hits were that character, he also went outside of it for at least one huge hit, as well as some other ones that maybe weren't as memorable for being, big hits, but popular movies. So my four then are Harrison Ford, Tom Cruise, Will Smith, and Roger Moore.
All right, Bobby, what do you got for your four picks?
This might be a quick one because I have all three commonalities of what Johnny just had with Joe. So Harrison Ford, Will Smith, Tom Cruise. Those were I think gimmies in my mind. Will Smith, I was actually debating, but I mean, he defined when we were growing up. He was the movie star. Every movie of his was a big hit that we needed to go see. And Harrison Ford, obviously multiple characters, multiple movies. And Tom Cruise he's just, Mission Impossible and everything else Johnny mentioned. My fourth one is someone who is definitely a pop culture icon for his physique, for his voice, for all the kind of the era of movies he's in, from action to comedy. And that's Arnold Schwarzenegger. Even in movies that are bad, I enjoy watching him, even if he is giving a bad performance, like in Batman and Robin. I just find him entertaining, and I even liked him in the Terminator Genesis, which is not a good movie, but he's the best part of that one. but he defined an era of kind of the muscle-bound action star, and then he kind of branched off and did a lot of comedies and type of stuff throughout the 90s. And that he was in one of the biggest blockbusters of all time for years, which was T2. And so I think that he kind of defines an era, him and Sly, and I went with Arnold over him. So there's my 4.
All right. And Tristan, what are your 4 picks?
All right, Tristan.
I have 2 that were already brought up, so I'm gonna knock them off really quick. I think Tom Cruise, the modern action star, he can draw people in to see anything he wants, and he's very much like involved as a producer. So I think that's very important too. Like he's not just going there and saying the lines. I feel like The Rock sometimes does that. He just goes there and says the lines. Tom Cruise is very much involved in the production and involved in the effects and the stunts and all that kind of stuff. And the second one is Harrison Ford. I think in creating iconic characters, and you can go back and watch him, and he's like a pleasure to watch. I think people overlook Harrison Ford as an actor sometimes. They're like, oh, he's just like the gruff guy who does the Han Solo lines. But I think he's given some really great performances, so I think he's a great actor to have on the list here. And then I have 2 that I haven't gotten brought up yet. The first I'm going to mention is one that might not always be the lead, but he has led a lot of movies, and he's popped up in I couldn't even count the amount of blockbusters, and that's Samuel L. Jackson. You got Star Wars, you got Marvel, you got Die Hard, you got Pulp Fiction. He's all over the map. You know, Pulp Fiction was that huge indie blockbuster hit. You know, no one really thought Pulp Fiction was going to be anything, and then he kind of relaunched a career with that. And of course, he's the supporting role of Marvel and Star Wars, and even in movies like Hitman's Bodyguard, like he does these B-level blockbusters that people go see and they make money, and that's kind of just like they go see him. He's the appeal, so I have him there on my spot. In my last, I wanted to cover what I consider to be a blockbuster actor, not necessarily from America and American movies, and that's Jackie Chan. He has some huge hits like Police Story that were huge hits in his home country, but he's also had some domestic hits, if you want to call them a blockbusters, only like Hollywood movies, and you could say like Kung Fu Panda, an animated huge blockbuster hit. Rush Hour was a huge blockbuster hit, so I think he has that cross appeal of multiple countries and also goes through multiple genres like action and comedy, and I think he also is someone that is very involved in his own stunts. And you look at Police Story, some of the most effective practical stunts in a movie, so I think he's kind of like a Tom Cruise of a different generation, of a different country, so I wanted to give him some love on my list here.
All right. So that's your 4, right? Yeah, so we have 3 that I think are locked in. Harrison Ford, Tom Cruise, and Will Smith. And we're looking for that 4th option. And for me, if I were to place my vote, and I think the audience agrees with me, is for that 4th option is Samuel L. Jackson.
I agree too. Yep.
Shout out to Sam Jackson. I love him. I didn't think of him because, I didn't pick him because he's not ever the lead of those movies, but I think that still deserves a place of being in as many as he's in.
Yeah. So is that what we're going for with those 4s? Does anyone have anything else they want to add? Or
I like that.
Shout
I
out
was
to
going to
Roger
say,
Moore.
what?
Yeah. And Arnold's always fun, but I would rather have Sam Jackson on the list.
Roger Moore.
I wanna. You go first.
No, you say something. I was just had a finishing up that.
I just wanted to add that I didn't realize you're gender specificing this list, so my 4th one was Marilyn Monroe, but I switched her out for Harrison Ford.
Oh, I didn't realize it was gender specific. I just think Hollywood's sexist.
It wasn't.
Yeah, Hollywood's
Yeah.
sexist, so
Yeah.
there weren't a whole lot of
Marilyn Monroe.
options. But
I just that's the problem when you look at like all of these lists, and I was just like, there's not many women characters that fall into summer blockbuster categories. If you take out, even if you look at the superhero movies, like in a few years you could argue maybe Wonder Woman, but she hasn't done enough, and you don't really have a lot of that. Which is a problem for sure.
I originally had Zoe Saldana because of the fact that she's in Avatar and the MCU and Star Trek and Pirates of the Caribbean, but then I remembered Avatar came out in December, so that doesn't really count. And I think Samuel L. Jackson kind of fills that similar type thing of, a person that's kind of the background in all of these franchises. So, and one thing I was going to say is Roger Moore was going to be my vote because I like the idea of the guy who is kind of known for just like really one franchise and dominated an era. But with that being said, our Mount Rushmore of summer blockbuster actors are Harrison Ford, Thomas Cruise Mapother IV, Will Smith, and Samuel L. Jackson.